Take these two games that were both made in 2 days for a game jam. What difference do you see in these games aside from their genre? One could say that the first one feels more polished and complete, while the second one feels more janky. I see it differently. I think the first game and the second game are trying to achieve two completely different things. Window Fracture is focused more on delivering a fully complete short experience. If there's any room for improvement, it's mostly in the actual content, such as adding more levels or mechanics. Departed, on the other hand, is more focused on giving you something new. It gives you a game with a bunch of concepts that you are unfamiliar with. The raw mechanics are the core of the game. Room for improvement in these types of games comes from actual polish and game juice, as the amount of mechanics is already pretty high. We've established that these games achieve different things, but how do we categorize them? I think we can categorize them based on core concept into two types: the idea and the gimmick. An idea is something that you want to experiment on, something with multiple layers and many different mechanics all working together. When making ideas for game jams, usually the main goal is to have a working prototype with all the mechanics in place by the end of the jam. The main point of the game is to see if your idea works or not. A gimmick is more of a simple concept. It's something you can explain as already existing thing, but, and so on in less than 2 sentences. This description covers almost all of the mechanics of the game itself. For example, Window Fracture is a platformer, but the player is stuck in fractured mirrors that they can move across. That's the entire game. Each level only has different variations to this core concept. Departed is an idea. It is a horror game where the player has to find different body parts scattered around the house while monsters chase the player, and each body part gives different powers to the player, and the player has to assemble the entire body to escape, and they can also hide from the monsters using the environment around them. If Departed was a gimmick, it would either be horror game where the player has to find body parts while running away from monsters, or a game where the player attaches body parts to themselves to gain powers. Mixing the two is what made it an idea because it makes the game more complicated. When making a gimmick, developers can focus more on polish, balance, game juice, and presentation or aesthetics. The point of making a gimmick type game is to focus more on delivering a finished product that can stand on its own. Sure, this game can be a prototype and a jumping off point for a more complicated final game as well, but even if it isn't, it still holds its ground. Now, this categorization definitely isn't perfect. Some concepts fall in the middle of the two, and it's definitely not black and white. But by categorizing your game concept into one of these before you start scoping, you will have a better idea of what to prioritize and work on. The more your game is leaning towards an idea, the more you can get away with not having that game juice or polish. This is useful if, for example, you're working solo or part-time on a game, but you want to release the game in, let's say, a month. If it's more of a gimmick, you might want to consider focusing less on adding extra mechanics and instead adding more of the polish. If it's more of an idea, on the other hand, which already depends on its mechanics as its main advantage, you might want to work more on those mechanics and keep polish for later. I would like to add that neither of these two categories are better or worse than the other. The word gimmick sounds a bit negative, but that is not the case. Tons of extremely popular and successful games are technically gimmicks. If you want to make a portfolio piece, or focus on making more presentable or fun games as a solo developer, I strongly recommend you to focus on a gimmick rather than an idea. In conclusion, both of these things do matter in game development. You need the right set of mechanics and the ability to fine-tune them properly, along with the polish, game juice, and aesthetics that complement these mechanics well. But when speaking of scope and time, using this categorization will better help you prioritize on what to work on next as a developer. If your game is an idea, it doesn't mean that it's exempt from polish and game juice, but that you can focus on implementing the mechanics first. And the lack of polish is less and less noticeable the more of an idea it is. And vice versa for a gimmick with mechanical depth. There are also times where you tune down the mechanics of the game on purpose to let the aesthetics and art shine more, and other times where you tune down the art to let the mechanics speak more. If you have all the development time you need to make your game, then you would develop both the mechanics and the game juice or aesthetics to the fullest, prioritizing what to do based on what category a game falls into.